Greetings, everyone. This is Jeff Wilkerson, Professor of Physics at Luther College, bringing you the next of our What to Look For in the Night Sky series. We're talking about the week of February 27, so mostly the first week of March 2023 this time around. And we're going to do, if you've watched these videos, and I know you have, I'm assuming you've gone back and re-watched them all 15, 20 times because, why not? Gather the family around, get the popcorn, hang out, spend all night just watching these videos. I can't think of a more rewarding thing to do. But anyway, if you've watched these, sometimes I've talked about the fact that we seem to get in what people might call a rut. I prefer to think of it as returning to the same idea to help us understand that idea and see that idea and let that idea sink in. Think about this as sort of educational benefit of repetitiveness instead of boring repetitiveness. But that's what, so we've done that before. And what we've done recently, we're going to do it again this week. That's why I'm warning you. I'm warning you right now. We've talked about close pairings of things in the sky. And we've got a really good week for that coming up again here. And my guess is, as much as anything else, we start talking about something like that, or we talk about nebulae or galaxies or certain ideas related to the motions in the sky or when we see stars where or whatever, and my mind starts tracking in that direction. So I was telling you as much about how my mind is working, the kinds of things I'm thinking about, as anything else perhaps. But this week, last week we had the moon making a beautiful grouping with Jupiter and Venus. I didn't get to see it. There's a winter storm going on, and so, but in any event, we've been tracking for a little while Venus closing in on Jupiter. And as we start this week on the 27th, evening of Monday, as soon as it gets dark and you look west into the glow of the sunset, you're looking at Venus has now closed within about 2 degrees, about 2 finger widths of Jupiter. So it's already beautiful, beautiful pairing of 2 really bright objects in the western globe right there. So that's fantastic. But if you swing on around, on up, so draw a line from Venus through Jupiter on up, and you hit Mars and the moon further up in the constellation Taurus. So you got bright orange Aldebaran right there. And we look at Aldebaran a lot in these things. So bright orange Aldebaran in the V of the Hyades. You got your Pleiades star cluster over here. And so when you swing up that direction, you'll see the moon is grazing Mars that night. For me, I'm assuming it gets closer. For other people, I don't know if it occults Mars this time around. I didn't bother to go look. I know that for me, it's going to get within about a degree or so, the moon sliding past Mars. And so a degree or two, kind of like this. The moon's about 55 to 60% full on this first night of the week that we're talking about on the 27th. And so just over half full. And that moon clips Mars as it goes by there. So we're going to have a really beautiful pairing up here in Taurus, the bull, as we're looking up that direction. Now, I want to pause for a moment. There's more to come here, but I want to pause for just a second, because one of the things that we're doing in the astronomy class I'm teaching right now, first time I've ever taught it in the spring semester, 2 semesters in a row, and it's great. There's nothing I'd rather be doing than thinking about these ideas with students. And so one of the things we're doing is we're looking at patterns like this. One of our learning goals for the course is to develop geometrical imagination. And so we're practicing thinking geometrically and saying, how can we look at the sky and think about what it's telling us about how we're moving, where we are, what the shape of things is. And we're going to do it throughout the semester. We've hit it pretty hard here. We're about 3 weeks into the semester, and we've hit it pretty hard here at the beginning of the semester. And we're going to take a little bit of a breather from it and then circle back to it later on in the semester as we do this sort of geometrical thinking. But this is one of the things we like to look at. That pattern of Venus to Jupiter to Mars and Neptune in between there and on around, as we see this sort of arc, this sort of straight line, if you will, what a straight line is on the inside of a sphere, that you can draw across here that hits Jupiter, Venus, Mars, and the moon. Not exactly, but it's a pretty narrow path of these things across here, and they lie in the zodiacal constellations. Taurus the bull, Gemini we'll see, Regulus in Leo we'll see, and Virgo we'll see as we talk on. So they follow the path of the sun. So one of the things we did in the lab last week is we asked the students to look at the positions of the planets over the course of the year 2021 and plot those positions on a constellation chart and see that pattern, to see where they fall right along the ecliptic, right along the path of the sun in the sky. And ask the students, what does that mean? What does that tell you? Practice your geometrical thinking. And what does that tell you about where we live and the nature of what's around us? And they come up with the idea, generally speaking, that it means that the planets are orbiting the sun as they follow the path of the sun. Now, I'm not sure that's the best evidence for heliocentrism, because you can have a geocentric cosmogony for sure, and have these things follow that same path around there. But it's getting at the right idea. We're starting to pull these things apart. So what we want to talk about is, if we look at this path, we can't look up here, and we can't look down here to see planets and the moon, or asteroids. We plot positions of asteroids on there sometimes too, or things like that. You're not looking up here very far. You're looking in this narrow strip. So what does it mean if you look in a narrow strip around this direction, and not up here and not down here? So you've got three-dimensional spherical space, but you're looking in this, and maybe we can start to see the flattened plane nature of the solar system just from making simple observations, like the fact that Jupiter and Venus can close on each other and nip past each other, and Mars and the moon can do the same thing, and Uranus and Neptune and Saturn and all of these planets do something similar like that, and the asteroids, if we plotted the asteroids, is they have all these close pairings. This is what got me thinking about it. They have all these close pairings because they're in this narrow plane where they slide past each other from our point of view all the time. And so enjoy that. Watch this. Draw that line from Venus to Jupiter, up to the moon and Mars, and up this direction, and think about this arc as you move across there, and to say, that's telling me something about this flattening. See if you can do that. Practice your geometrical imagination. By a few days later, a couple of days later, on March 1st, Venus will have closed this gap down, and these things will be right on top of each other. So what you're going to see is, on March 1st, they're less than half a degree apart, depending on what time you see them, when it's dark for you, and when you see these things. But they are about as close in the sky as they're going to get for you. And so you got these two big bright objects right on top of each other. This is beautiful. Try not to miss March 1st. You get out there and you see these two objects, Venus and Jupiter, right on top of each other. But part of the joy is watching them move. That gap closed. Having seen them on the 27th, and 2 days later see that gap completely closed, by the 5th, by Sunday night, there, 3 3/4 degrees separates them again. Venus is past Jupiter and is up here, and you've got this big gap opening back up. So you're really fun to see this dance. Really makes it obvious when these two things are two bright objects are this close together, and you can see them sliding and moving relative to one another. So the 27th, you got the moon next to Mars in Taurus the Bull, and on March 1st, you've got Venus and Jupiter having closed that gap down to almost nothing. By March 2nd, the moon will have moved over and be next to Pollux. And Castor and Pollux, the twin stars, another zodiacal constellation, and it's about 80 to 85% full, and it just slides past within a couple degrees of Pollux. So you've got a nice pairing of the moon with the bright star Pollux. And then by the end of the week again, on the 5th, the moon will be just above Regulus, just north of Regulus, about 4 degrees, and it's almost full at this point. So Regulus is, we got the backwards question mark tail of Leo. So there's the tail ahead of Leo, excuse me. And you've got the moon sliding past here, 95 to 100% full, going past the bright star Regulus right there on the 5th. So the moon's going to make great pairings with Mars, Pollux, and Regulus this week. And then sitting below, you've got the Y shape, the martini glass shape, Virgo with Spica, the bright star down here. And I point that out because as we're thinking about this geometry, we want to think a little bit. We start here looking at Gemini and Taurus. And when we look at Gemini and Taurus, these constellations, zodiacal constellations where the sun and the planets and the moon and all the objects of the solar system can be, relatively high in the sky when we see them. But we see them at night. So if we're looking at them at night and they're relatively high in the sky, that means the sun is there. The sun passes right through there. That's what makes them on the ecliptic part of the solar system from our point of view. That means the sun is there at the opposite time of year. And we're seeing these things in winter. So we're seeing these things high in the sky at Taurus and Gemini, high in the sky in January, February, maybe December sky. And so that means the sun is there in the middle of summer. And so that's where the sun is high in the sky. And so we see the sun high up there. Now by the time you've gotten to Leo and Virgo, you're starting to see these constellations don't get nearly as high in the sky. And so the sun is going to be in Leo and Virgo then as we pass along and move on into, say, fall. So we're getting to the fall sky. The sun has started to lose altitude for us northerners here, and it's starting to get lower in the sky. It passes down through there. It's headed towards Scorpius and Sagittarius, which we see is very low on the summer sky, very low in the summer sky, and that's where the sun is in the wintertime. That's where the sun has just moved out of that region and it's headed on Capricornus. I think the sun is probably at, well, anyway, you get the idea. And so think about that as you're envisioning the flat plane of the solar system, watching these beautiful pairings. Notice where where these pairings are occurring, where the zodiacal constellations are in the sky, and how the zodiacal constellations of winter, where the sun is in the summer, are higher in the sky than the zodiacal constellations of spring, Leo and Virgo, where the sun is in the fall. So that's what we got for you this week. Hope you have another great week of observing. Hope you have another great week of everything possible. And we'll have something new for you next week. As always, thanks for watching.